Thank you. Uh, I feel the need just to say why I'm speaking today. This is my first time speaking to a group of people beside telling my story, part of my life story beside my wife and very close friends. Uh, it started, I belong to a men's group and we meet once a week. A bunch of old men, we meet one week every, and every time when we have someone's birthday, we share our life journey, our life story. And I think I've been in that group for about 10 years. I was very hesitant, to share my life story because there was some big part of it was very painful, to me. So I kept it hidden. Until a couple of years ago, and I was very open and I shared my life story and journey. I'm originally from Lebanon. I came to the United States in 1977, so I've been here for 42 years. And so why I'm sharing it right now, and because it started at the men's group, they said, your story, I think, is important for other people to hear it, especially in particular right now, at this time that we have a lot of hate and a lot of people that, they're not ashamed to show their hate and looking at other people in a very demeaning and subhuman way. So I'm hoping that, got something for me to share here. I start what I'm telling my name again. My name is Abbas Moussaoui. I was born in 1953 in the east part of Lebanon. Throughout my childhood, I like to hear the call for prayer that's coming out of the minaret, mosque minaret, 3 times a day. I loved listening to the call for prayer because I don't know if any of you heard the call for prayer. It has some kind of tone. It's kind of nice to hear, and listen to it. But those calls almost all the time are followed by sermons to kill Jews, infidels, and those are the enemies of God. These calls, followed me in a lot of places, and even when I don't hear them in public, I used to hear them in my head. They ring and just repeat it in my head. As a child, I loved playing in the field with other children, and as children, we don't want to come home even when it gets dark. And but my mother with other mothers, they come out calling our name to come home, and when we are not answering their call, they will, scares us, telling us, you need to come home before Jews come and suck your blood. After I had finished my elementary school, I moved to Beirut, and where I lived with my brother to go to school. Beirut is much bigger. It's a bigger city than where I was raised. And I got the opportunity to meet a lot of young graduate Lebanese students who graduated from France. And they came, with a lot of ideas about need for change in Lebanon and the Middle East. And the need for change, not just simple, change, because, Middle East, have been, suffering for a lot of backward, and dictatorship that, throughout the region. I start meeting with them, and I start reading books and publication, and most of those books were prohibited. So I remember using those books, and when I moving from in the street, I used to hide them under my clothing, worrying that if the police, catch him, I'd be in trouble. I start, marching in the street, demanding change, equity, equality, democracy. Most of the marches always ended up in a bloody and horrific, way. One of the marches that I was, remember that I was marching behind one of my friends whom I had tea the night before, and he was holding a megaphone and on somebody else, shoulder, repeating slogans, and we repeating after him. The police start shooting, and hit, my friend. His head exploded, and I was covered with blood. Everybody, start running. I start running, screaming and crying, and I end up on one side of the street, trying to wipe off blood of my face. I had found a job, and I was working for a German company called Olivetti, and I was a machine technician. And at one time, I was in call in East Beirut. Beirut is divided for two sections. East is predominantly Christian, and West is predominantly Muslims. While I was working, I heard some gunshots, and when we looked through the window, we saw some Christian militia with big crosses hanging around their necks, and they had a roadblock and checking, passengers and people identification card. In Lebanon, Lebanese ID specify your religion. So it's not like something that you choose and something you're born Muslim, you're Muslim in your ID, and that's your ID. You use it for driving and identifying yourself everywhere. So when they find Muslim, they kidnap them and put them or kill them right on the spot. There was a car sped by with bodies dragged behind it. The office owner, is a Christian, and so he hid me under a desk until the gunshot stopped and militia moved to another street. I ran out and used some alleyways to come to the West Beirut, where I live. I saw the same thing in West Beirut with the Christian militia have the same roadblock, and you hear gunshots, and there were some bodies hanging off a bridge. I'm sure that they were Christians. Acts of violence stayed there for 15 years, because the civil war in Lebanon stayed 15 years, and over 150,000 people killed during the war. Those acts of violence were shared between Christians, Muslims, and Jews, because in 1982, under the Colonel Ariel Sharon, led the Israeli army and entered Beirut and encircled, one of the Palestinian camps, and invited, the Christian militia from East Beirut to enter the camp. And the Palestinian camp was empty of their fighters, because at that time, if you all remember, that they were pulled out of Beirut and then moved, to other country in the Middle East. So the Christian militia entered the camp and killed over 1,500 children, women, and elderly. At the end of 1977, I felt the need to leave and go far away from there. And I decided to come to the United States. Even spoke no English. I could have gone to France because I spoke French beside Arabic, but I don't know why till now, why I decided to come to the United States, even it was a big challenge for me because I spoke no English. I came landed in Dallas, Fort Worth airport, and stayed with a friend of mine whom I knew from Lebanon, and he was going to NTSU in Den, Texas. And I started learning English, and he started teaching me English, and other friends, of his too. And I watched a lot of TV, and I thought I learned from TV, and that's when I got hooked on Gunsmoke and Bonanza. And I went to the English Language Center in Arlington, Texas, and to learn, English. And I met someone and told me about coming to Shreveport where I can find a job, which is I did. And a few days later, he takes me to a restaurant on Kings Highway, and we go inside, and then when it came my turn to order, I looked at the man behind the register and asked him I wanted 2 pieces of kitchen. And man behind the register, how smiled and told me that, you mean 2 pieces of chicken, son. When he came and brought our order to the table, my friend told him that I was looking for a job. And he looked at me and he said, you come tomorrow and you can work tomorrow. And I did. That was Mr. Mandel Wiseman, who owned Wiseman chicken place on Kings Highway. The first job that I had was offered to me by a Jewish man whom I'm supposed to hate and kill. Mr. Wiseman was even paying me with more money than what I worked for. He opened his house and he gave me 1 room for me to stay. Mr. Wiseman introduced me to other people, and one is Mrs. Ruth Foyle, and who helped me to go to school, to Trinity College, and later on to Louisiana Tech University, where I graduated from in engineering in 1982. Remembering this for a long time, I just didn't want to remember it, and I put it away like it never happened. It was very painful for a long time, and still I started, as I said, looking at it and learned a lot. But Mr. Wiseman kept helping me even when I got married. And I had 2 children, named Yusuf and Rita. And my daughter Rita would remind me a few weeks ago that Mr. Wiseman will deliver every Thanksgiving. He delivered a turkey for us, for my family. at one day that he came and delivered the turkey, and they found out, my doorbell was not working. He comes back next day with a new doorbell for me. To Mr. Wiseman, I learned and I became who I am right now. And reflecting, back on my journey, and I'm still going through that journey, I always remember him and that man that I'm supposed to hate and kill. He offered his help, and he didn't ask who I am, even at a lot of time that he was warned for not helping me and not trust me because I could be a terrorist. To Mr. Wiseman, I'm grateful for your kindness. I carry your spirit with me as I continue this journey called life. Your spirit cannot be described with words, only felt within my heart. The world need more people like Mr. Wiseman. Thank you.